Hi children, how are you? I hope all are fine. Today we are going to learn a new chapter from Social Studies, chapter 18. The name of the chapter is Human Rights. The name of the chapter is Human Rights. Rights. Have you heard this word rights? Rights means rules about what a person is allowed to do or have is known as rights. Rules about what a person is allowed to do or have is known as rights. The rules about what a person is allowed to do or have is known as rights. Then what is meant by human rights? The basic rights a human being should have in order to live with dignity and self-respect are called human rights. So the basic rights a human being should have in order to live with dignity and self-respect. Dignity means nobility. Dignity means nobility. So the basic rights a human being should have in order to live with dignity and self-respect are called human rights. So what is meant by human rights? What is meant by human rights? The basic rights of a human being should have in order to live with dignity and self-respect are called human rights. So these rights are essential for a person to lead a civilized life. So these human rights are essential for a person to lead a civilized life. Civilized means high state of culture and development. High state of culture and development is known as civilized. So human rights are essential. Human rights are need for a person to lead a civilized life. Human rights are essential for a person to lead a civilized life. So which are the important human rights? Which are the important human rights? They are the right to adequate food. The right to adequate food. Adequate or enough. Adequate means enough. The right to enough food. Right to education. Right to education. Right to health care. Right to health care. Then right to equality of status and opportunity. Right to equality of status and opportunity. And right to liberty of thought, expression, belief and faith. The freedom, liberty means freedom. The right to freedom of thought, expression, belief and faith. These are the important human rights. So which are the important human rights? The right to enough food, right to adequate food, right to education, right to health care, right to equality of status and opportunity, and right to liberty of thought, expression, belief and faith. So a person who enjoys these rights, a person who enjoys these rights will be able to lead a life of dignity and honor. So a person who enjoys these human rights will be able to lead a life of dignity and honor. So when everyone enjoys these rights and performs his or her responsibilities, all can live in peace and harmony. So when everyone enjoys these rights and performs his or her responsibilities means duties, and all can live in peace and harmony. Harmony means happiness or agreement. Harmony means happiness. So when we can live in peace and harmony, when everyone enjoy the human rights and perform his or her duties or responsibilities, that time all can live in peace and harmony. So in this lesson, we shall learn about some great people who lived and fought for human rights and some organizations that work for the protection of human rights. So in this chapter, we are going to learn about some great people and they lived and fought for human rights and some organizations and that work for the protection of human rights. So firstly, we are going to learn people who fought for human rights. people who fought for human rights. So physical strength or the wealth of a person does not measure his greatness. And maybe simply we think that physical strength and wealth is very important. But physical strength or wealth of a person does not measure his greatness. And a man is great in his character, his values, his thought and ideas are great. And a man is great when his character, his values, his thought and ideas are great. Such men live and work for the welfare of other people and the society. So such type of people or great man, and they live for whom? They not live them, and they live for other people and the society. And great men are loved and remembered forever. Great men are loved and remembered forever. So such type of persons we are going to learn in this chapter. So in this chapter, firstly we are going to learn people who fought for human rights. So first one, Socrates. Socrates, and his lifespan is 470 BC to 399 BC. Before Christ only. BC means before Christ. 470 to 399. Socrates. So Socrates was a Greek philosopher who lived in Athens around 400 BC. So Socrates was a great philosopher who lived in Athens around 400 BC. And from childhood, Socrates had a great love for learning. From childhood, Socrates had a great love for learning. And he worked hard at school and continued his learning even later in life. And he worked hard at school and continued his learning even later in life. There is no age limit for learning. And so he is called the wisest man and greatest thinker of the ancient time. So Socrates is called the wisest man and the greatest thinker of the ancient times. Why? Because he worked hard at school and continued his learning even later in life. That's why Socrates is called the wisest man and greatest thinker of the ancient times. Then Socrates always stood for truth and justice. Socrates always stood for truth and justice. And he liked to reason out things on his own. So he liked to reason out things on his own. He liked to think in his own ways. He liked to think in his own ways. He liked to reason out things on his own. And he taught his pupils not by lecturing but by asking a series of questions. And he taught his pupils, he taught his children, he taught his students how? Not by lecturing method, and by asking a series of questions. So Socrates taught his students how? Not by lecturing but by asking a series of questions. Then many of the Athenians did not like his philosophy. Many of the Athenians means the people of the Athens. Many of the Athenians did not like his philosophy. Socrates' philosophy, most of the people resisted it. And the ruling class thought that Socrates was challenging their authority and misguiding the people. The ruling class, and they thought that Socrates was challenging their authority and misguiding the people. And they warned him strictly. The authorities warned Socrates very strictly. And Socrates courageously stood for truth and great values. Socrates ignored the warning and all. Avoid the warning. And he courageously stood for truth and great values. And hence he was put in prison. Prison means jail. And when the authorities found that Socrates was firm in his belief, they sentenced him to death. So when the authorities found that Socrates was firm in his beliefs, Socrates was not firm in his beliefs. He not at all ready to change. He was not at all ready to change. That's why what they do, the authorities sentenced him to death. Sentenced means declare the punishment. Declared the punishment. What punishment? Him to death. He was given a cup of poison which he gladly drank and died at the age of 70.